Imagine that tomorrow the sun suddenly becomes twice as bright. Apartment windows glow even at night, streets become uninhabitable, and temperatures rise every hour. Does this sound like the plot of a science fiction movie? But there is real science behind it. In physics, there is a concept called the luminosity of a star. This is the amount of energy it radiates. The sun today has a luminosity of about 3.8 times 10 to the 26 watts. If we doubled it, we would have catastrophic consequences. Today, we will analyze what processes would begin on Earth, would people be able to survive, and whether such a scenario is possible in the future. Interestingly, we already see some of these phenomena in the solar system, on Venus, Mars, and even Jupiter's moons. Watch until the end, because we will draw a parallel with the real fate of our planet. Radical changes on Earth. Solar energy is the main source of life on Earth, but its excess is deadly. Energy balance. Today, the Earth receives about 1,361 watts per meter squared at the upper boundary of the atmosphere. When doubled, this figure increases to 2,722 watts per meter squared. This is as if we increased the power of the global greenhouse effect dozens of times in a few days. Atmosphere. The concentration of water vapor, the most powerful greenhouse gas, would increase. Climate models show that even plus 10% of solar energy can unbalance the system. Doubling turns the atmosphere into a heat trap. Oceans. In 100 to 200 years, the oceans would completely evaporate. Water from the atmosphere would gradually escape into space due to photodissociation, the breakdown of molecules under the influence of ultraviolet light. This explains why Venus is today dry, even though it once had oceans. Temperature. The Earth would become like Venus, from plus 200 degrees Celsius to plus 400 degrees Celsius. No modern technology would be able to withstand such conditions. Biosphere and life. What would happen to the living world? Plants. At first, they would receive twice as much energy for photosynthesis. But photosynthesis has a limit. Excess ultraviolet destroys chlorophyll, and overheating dries out the soil. Forests would die out first, steppes and savannas would follow. Animals. Those that depend on plants would not survive. Insects, which today make up 80% of the biomass, would disappear in a few generations. Only extremophiles would survive. Bacteria that live in volcanoes, near black smoke stacks in the ocean, in the Arctic or deserts. Examples from reality. There are microorganisms on Earth that can withstand temperatures up to 120 degrees Celsius. There are even so-called tardigrades, or water bears, that survive the vacuum of space and radiation. In such a world, they could become the new masters of the planet. That is, the scenario is follows. The Earth loses complex ecosystems and returns to the microbial level of life development. Humanity in the conditions of a double sun. Man survives thanks to technology. What could we do? Underground cities. Similar ideas already exist. Underground complexes are being designed in Singapore, China, and Canada. In such a world, the entire civilization would move below the surface. Domes and mirrors. A possible option is the construction of giant domes with a reflective coating. Such technologies are being developed for space colonies, NASA projects with solar mirrors.
Colonization of other planets. Interestingly, Mars would receive more heat in this scenario. If the sun were twice as bright, the average temperature of Mars would rise almost to the level of the modern Earth. That is, it would become the main candidate for a new home for humanity.
Space settlements. Physicist Gerard O'Neill proposed creating rotating cylinders in space back in the 1970s. In a world with a double sun, such O'Neill colonies would be the only safe option. But all this would only postpone the end. Long-term survival on Earth would become impossible. Is such a scenario possible in reality? Now the main question, can the sun really become twice as bright? No, it's impossible instantly. The sun is a stable star of spectral class G2. To double its brightness, it would have to radically change its stage of evolution. But yes, it will happen gradually. Every 100 million years, the sun's luminosity increases by about 1%. In 1 billion years, the Earth will become so hot that the oceans will evaporate. In 5 billion years, the sun will expand into a red giant and swallow Mercury, Venus, and possibly the Earth. Astronomical parallels. We see similar processes in other stars. For example, the star Betelgeuse in the constellation Orion has already become a supergiant. And stars like the sun always go through a phase of increasing brightness. That is, in the distant future, the scenario of a double sun is not a fantasy, but an inevitable reality. If the sun were to become twice as bright as today, the Earth would turn into a second Venus. We would lose the oceans, the atmosphere, the biosphere, and ultimately the possibility of living here. But this shows once again, space is not just our home, but a challenge. The future of humanity depends on whether we learn to go beyond the boundaries of Earth. And what do you think? Will Mars or space colonies become our next home? Write your opinion in the comments, and subscribe to the channel to learn more about space and the future of civilization.